Okay. So we're on page 162. The halachas of who can be the shliach tzibur, who's appropriate to be the shliach tzibur. So we saw yesterday that someone who's done.
What's the simon?
Oh, sorry. Simon nun gimel if vov. So we saw yesterday that we can't appoint someone as the shliach tzibur who's done an aveira in the past, one of the more stringent aveiras. We saw examples, someone who's done any immoral acts, or someone who's murdered, someone who's been over it's a shvur, making an oath, which is very strict. As also Shlomo Zalman writes, someone who's been to the Arkoy Shel Goyim. He went to the Goysha courts instead of going to Beis Din, or that he didn't get a heter Arkoy, he didn't get permission from Beis Din to go to the Goysha courts first. Anyone who's done any one of these aveiras, even just once we saw, it disqualifies him as being a shliach tzibur. Now we're going to move on to see some other qualifications necessary. Seif Vav, this is the bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch. Ein memanin elo mi shenismali zikono mipnei koved hatzibur. Because of the koved hatzibur, we only appoint someone who has a beard. Doesn't mean he literally has a beard. It means that his beard has started growing. Right? Meaning he has to be mature, as opposed to a kid who's bar mitzvah, but he hasn't yet physically matured so much. But occasionally, if it's just on an occasional basis, then even if he's just bar mitzvah, he has two hairs. Two hairs is when we talk about bar mitzvah. I'll give an introduction. When we talk about bar mitzvah, we talk about age 13. That's bar mitzvah, right? It's not strictly true. In order to be bar mitzvah, there's two requirements. The boy has to be age 13, and he also has to reach a certain level of physical maturity, which defines as shtei saus, two hairs. He has to have two hairs that have started to grow in the pubic area. Right? That makes someone bar mitzvah. Right? So it's not exactly, and it has to be after the age 13. You have to have both, 13 plus two hairs. Right? First of all, we don't go around checking if people have hairs, right? So what do? So first of all, there's something called Shacharit-Mishna Berura-The. Mishnah might mention it. Shacharit-Mishna Berura-The. Shacharit-Mishna Berura-The is we assume that if someone has reached the required age 13, we also assume that he has achieved that level of physical maturity. We take that's the assumption we take on. Shacharit-Mishna. However, this assumption is only for D'Rabbanan, only for mitzvahs that are rabbinic. For biblical mitzvahs, we do not assume this. Right? So for davening, to be shliach tzibur, which is D'Rabbanan, and once he's 13, we let him be shliach tzibur. Right? For things that are deraisa, for example, to lane, we'd also let him lane. Right? But parshanut-torah-comment, we won't let a 13-year-old lane parshanut-torah-comment. Because it could be that he's not physically mature. So we won't let a 13-year-old lane parshanut-torah-comment unless we see on his face that he has a lot of hair on his face, and then we can assume that also in the pubic areas reach the level of physical maturity. So things like laning, zimun is a machlokes, according to the Mishnah, it's a D'Rabbanan, according to the Chaznish, it's a deraisa. Right? So for the bar mitzvah boys always at their bar mitzvah, and they do the zimun as well at the su'udah usually. That's relying on the Mishnah Berura, someone who passes like the Chaznish, it'd be more problematic to do that. But that's the general idea. Okay? So here, once he's 13, we're going to let him be shliach tzibur on an occasional basis, but he can't be because of koved hatzibur, we will not appoint him as a fixed shliach tzibur until he has more of a filled out beard. So he cannot even be appointed on an occasional basis. Right? He can't be appointed to be the fill-in. Right? He mustn't be appointed at all. He can do it on an occasional basis here and there. We're missing someone. You can ask him to daven, but he cannot be appointed even if the appointment is only to daven occasionally. Okay. It's interesting. The tzibur can't even be moichel. They can't be moichel their covet. Even though the reason why he may not be appointed on a fixed basis is because of the covet of the community, they cannot be moichel it. They can't say, we don't mind, we're happy to have a 13-year-old davening fast. They can't do that. So if Kotten Kavdalet by Koi, because of B'Shayim Eis Hashana, Avo B'Tanya so B'Rosh Hashanah V'Yom Kippurim, Afilu B'Akrai, Ein Uridin L'Mi Shelo Nismal L'Zkoneh, V'Gam B'Zeh Ein Hokel Afil Adei Mechilas Tzibur. That which we said that a 13-year-old can daven on an occasional basis, that does not include Tanis or Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Tanis Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, he has to be that he's reached the level of Nismal L'Zkoneh, that his beard has filled out. Okay. Sif Cotton Cafe, Mishahevi Beisaris, Ratzalema Achashegi Al Yud Gimel Shana, to Kodin Loim Hanias Hais, is what we mentioned, that he has to be 13 and have 2 hairs. This is what we mentioned, that when it comes to drabonon, we rely on the majority of bar mitzvah boys that have reached physical maturity. שמביאים ביסס הזמן. ואם בפעמים קודם שכוסף דלהרמב"ם דסויב תפילה דרייסה, יהיה עושה להשת הזה להוציא די אחרים בתפילה, עד שנדע בוודאי שהביא ביסס אין שם. According to the Rambam, davening is a deraisa, and therefore the shliach tzibur, if he's a bar mitzvah, he would not be able to be motzi people unless he's reached the level of malez kon. Generally, we don't do that if one does their own tefillah. But if someone wasn't able to daven and he would need the shliach tzibur to be motzi him with the Shemona Esrei, then we would have to make sure that the shliach tzibur was not just a 13 or 14-year-old. Have to make sure he had to have lots of hair in his beard.
How does that affect the repetition of Yemida?
So the repetition is just rabbanon. Unless it's actually been motzi someone who hasn't davened and needs to daven, in which case it would be a deraisa. But in most cases where everyone's already davened, the repetition is just rabbanon, and therefore even if he's just 13, he can do it.
But if somebody is, let's say, unable to read for some reason,
and then
it's a problem.
Then it's a problem.
Right.
It's still a machlokas because it depends on. It's only according to the Rambam that's deraisa. So I would be placed to be lenient. Right. But preferably, it would be better to take someone a bit older. Yes. Okay. Fine. Let's move on. Tzif Zayin. Let's move on to the next. If says the Shulchan Aruch Tzif Zayin. Im ein shom mi sheyodeh liyos shat. If there's no one there who is capable of being shliach tzibur. Ki im ben yud gimel v'yom echad. All we have is a 13-year-old. It's better that he should be at the shliach tzibur rather than not having kedusha kadosh at all. So he's the only one capable of doing chazos hashatz and doing kedusha baruch. So we're allowed to appoint him even on a fixed basis, because if we don't appoint him on a fixed basis, there's not going to be any kadosh kedusha in this area. So therefore, we can appoint him in that case if he's the only one capable. Tzivches. That's the Shulchan Aruch Tzivches. Full-time Shulchan Aruch. Mi she'eino ba'al zokon, kol shenikra bo shegi'a lechlal shonim, shero'i le'izmalis zikonoi, nismale zikonoi korinon bei. Some people, they have various different conditions and their hair doesn't actually grow. Right? So we're talking about someone who's older, but he hasn't sprouted any hairs because he can't. So once he's reached the age, so what's the halacha of this person? Once he's reached the age that others would have hair sprouted, then that's okay. Hilkoch, for a more exact definition, ben chaf shono, afa pi she'ein lo zokon, memanin oiseh. Therefore, if he's reached the age of 20, even if he hasn't got any beard at all, he can be appointed as a fixed shliach tzibur. Says the Ramah Hagor, v'chenim hoyo lo zokon afilu ma'at, korino ben izmal zokon imhu me ben yudches ulemala. Similarly, if he has a little bit of hair on his beard, once he's reached the age of 18, then one can also appoint him as shliach tzibur. Okay? For this reason, when the shul that I grew up in, the rule is to parsha zocha, one had to be 18 in order to be parsha zocha. Right? So if cotton Yeah, okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next sif. Says the Shulchan Aruch Sif Tes.
This is true, it's only true for Parsha Zachar and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
And any Tanis.
Anytime.
Parshas Porah is a machlokas. According to the Shulchan Aruch, Parshas Porah is deraisa.
Right.
Others you disagree.
What about the rest of the Shalosh Regalim? It's not an issue.
No, they're not deraisa. No, one second. This is referring to appointing him as a fixed shliach tzibur. That's with everything.
Right.
Appointing him as a fixed shliach tzibur is irrelevant. To appoint him as the shliach tzibur, it has to be either nismalus konoi, or if it's someone who can't, then it has to be either a little bit of hair and age 18, or even if he's got nothing, age 20.
Right.
To appoint him as the fixed shliach tzibur.
Or if there's nobody else.
And if there's no one else, then we said he can do it. If there's no one else, then he can do it even from age 13.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if there's no one else, and without him there's not going to be any Kedusha Baruch Hu, then he can do it from age 13. In a regular place where we have got other people who can be a Shliach Tzibur, then we may not appoint someone who has not yet filled out his beard on a fixed basis. He may, however, do it on an occasional basis, but he may not do Tanis, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Zohar, or Gam Rosh Hashanah.
But it means that we're accepting that a 13-year-old is kosher to do it.
Correct. We're accepting he's 13, but there's two problems. Number one, we have the problem that we don't know, we're not 100% sure he's okay. He's probably okay, we're not 100% sure, and therefore for derisers we will not rely on this, because we haven't checked to see if he has pubic hairs.
Unless there's nobody else.
Hmm?
Unless there's nobody else, and then we will rely on it.
We didn't, for derisers we didn't mention that. For that's Drabbonans.
This is only Rabbanan.
Right, if there's no one else to do Parsha Zohar, there's literally no one else, of course it's better to have him than no one.
Right.
Yeah, even for derisers, if there's no one and you're not going to have Parsha Zohar, then of course you should do it. Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand is that we don't actually have that situation. If we believe something is not
Right.
correct, let's say not kosher, right? We don't say because you're very hungry, eat it.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I guess this is a comparison to a leniency or a Shabbos meal that you might have with kashrus. You know, that if you wouldn't have the Shabbos meal, there are leniencies that exist in kashrus for questions.
This is not similar to that. There, with kashrus, we're talking about where we're perhaps doing a prohibition. Here we're not talking about a prohibition. Here we're talking about the fact that we need to be yotze a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, a positive mitzvah that has to be done.
Right.
We have to hear zochar.
Right.
So therefore we do not rely on it because it's a mitzvah deraisa. So we'll take someone who we know for sure is going to be motzias with Parsha Zochar. You're talking about a situation where there's no one who can read zochar except for this person. Without him, we're definitely not going to be yotze the mitzvah.
Right.
We're 100% sure not to be yotze the mitzvah.
Right.
If we take him, we'll probably be yotze. We're not 100% sure.
Right.
So of course we should take him.
Right.
Because we'll probably be yotze.
So we have, right. Okay.
In a case where we have an option of someone who will definitely be yotze, then of course we should take the person who will definitely be yotze. Right? That's with regards to the Reises. With regards to the Rabbanans, so then this is not an issue, you can do it. However, there's a separate issue, which is Kovod HaTzibur. Because of the Kovod, the respect for the congregation, we do not appoint someone on a fixed basis if he hasn't reached 11 as well as a common. Right? Again, if there's no one available, it's better him than no one else, right? Because then we'll know Kedusha Baruch Hu. Right? And we mentioned Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur also, and Tanias, also because there we really davening Hashem, we really need an excellent representative in a dire straits. Then again there we don't appoint him, even though it's on an occasional basis. We don't appoint him.
Right.
Okay, fine. Let's just read one more sif because it's very short. Sif Tes. Soris yesh omen shemuter limnosei imhu ben esrim. Soris is someone who's I don't know how we say it. What's called in English. Someone who's is never going to reach the physical maturity. He hasn't got the necessary enzymes, whatever else. He can't have children. This person is a machlokes. Some say that when he reaches the age of 20, he can be appointed. Others hold that even after that he can't.